friends, I am Arpit and I'm here with today's analysis. Today is 13th of May and we are going to cover two very important topics which are in news. First is northern and southern lights. Well, in the northern hemisphere, these lights are known as aurora borealis, and in the southern hemisphere, it is known as aurora australis. It is caused due to sun's activities. The coronal mass ejections from the suns or the solar waves coming from the suns, they interact with the earth's magnetic field and create colorful lightings in the sky. Generally these are witnessed on the poles, but with the increasing intensity of these coronal mass injections from the sun, they are now visible at the lower latitudes as well. Hence they were visible in Ladakh. This happened for the second time that these lights were visible over here in Ladakh. Next is ULB elections in Nagaland. The urban local body elections in Nagaland have been conducted in 2004, and that is the only time when elections have been conducted for the local level. What is the major bone of contention? Why hasn't Nagaland complied by the 74th Amendment Act? The main issue is women's reservation. The 74th Amendment Act calls for giving at least 33% or reserving at least 33% of the seats for women at all levels. But, the Naga tribes say that women do not participate in the administrative practices according to their customary practices. And they claim that the constitution under Article 371A gives them the right to uphold their customary practices, and hence they are upholding 371A above the 74th Amendment Act, and they are not allowing women to participate, or they do not want women to participate. However, a compromise has been reached, a new law has been passed by the state legislative assembly, and in June this year, after the general elections are concluded, these elections are going to be conducted. So let us look into the details and see both these topics. Now, northern and southern lights. The night sky was lit up by the northern lights or aurora borealis at Hanle village in Ladakh. As simple as that. We are here on the earth. This is the equator. If these lights are witnessed in the northern hemisphere, these are called as northern lights. If these lights are witnessed in the southern hemisphere, these are called as the southern lights. Now, generally what happens that these lights are visible on the pole areas. Why they are visible generally in the pole areas, we will see. But, you know, from a few years, this has been visible in the lower latitudes as well. Like Ladakh, a lower latitude region, as compared to the poles, it is visible. It is the second time it has been visible in Ladakh. The first time it was visible about 2 to 3 years ago. And the night sky turned in this color. This is the red color or the orangish color you can see. Now, meanwhile, southern lights or aurora australis were spotted in countries such as New Zealand and Australia also. There, they are known as southern lights because they are part of the southern hemisphere, or they are also called as aurora australis. Australis comes from the name Australia. What are auroras? They are essentially natural lights. First of all, we need to understand this. That appear bright, swirling curtains in the night sky. Generally, during as the night falls, these lights are visible in the sky. There are multiple colors. It is not like only orange color is there as you saw in the picture. There is orange color light, there is green color light, blue, red, yellow. All these colors are there. Primarily, they appear near the poles, but you know, sometimes they expand to lower latitudes as well. As mentioned before, that in the north, the display is called as aurora borealis. In the south, it is called as aurora australis. Why do auroras occur? This is something which needs to be known. Now, these auroras occur due to the activities on the sun's surface, not over here. Yes, you might be surprised the sun's surface creating these kind of lights. Obviously, light on earth is due to sun. So, on one hand, it is quite commonsensical also. But yes, you need to understand that what exactly happens. Now, this sun continuously releases stream of charged particles. These stream of charged particles, mainly electrons and protons, they are there, and magnetic fields called as the solar winds. They come from here. The solar wind is coming from the sun. This solar wind is kind of a magnetic field coming from the sun. Now, when these magnetic field coming from the sun comes and intercepts with the Earth's magnetic field, this is basically the Earth's magnetic field which you are seeing over here. Draw it with a separate color. This is basically the Earth's magnetic field, and when these solar winds, sun's magnetic field kind of, they are coming and interacting with the Earth's magnetic field, they get deflected. Okay, in the magnetic field, if the same poles are there, they get repelled. But some of them, they get diverted towards the Earth. As the solar wind approaches the Earth, it is deflected by the planet's magnetic field, which acts like a protective shield for these. But you know, some of it, some of these, they get diverted towards the Earth's station. So these waves are coming. So these yellow ones are getting diverted, deflected away. But yes, some of them, they do come over here and they cause the auroras over here. Aurora australis and aurora borealis. And generally it is appeared on the poles. But if the intensity of these magnetic waves which are coming from the sun is too high, then these aurora borealis gets extended to the lower latitudes as well. Now, some of the charged particles are trapped in the magnetic field and they travel down the magnetic field lines at the north and south pole into the upper atmosphere of the Earth. These particles then interact with the different gases present over there in the upper atmosphere, resulting in tiny flashes that light up the night sky. Now, if they collide with oxygen, a green color light is formed. If these magnetic particles interact with nitrogen, it produces shades of blue and purple. So, likewise, it depends on their interaction with which material or which atmospheric component in the Earth's atmosphere. The color of that particular magnetic field or the resultant color depends on that interaction. What particle is interacting with which particle? And this colors or this creates multiple, I would say, colored magnetic fields. Now, how do the auroras expand to mid latitudes? So, on the poles, it is quite common because the magnetic field getting diverted most of it. But yes, some coming towards the Earth, so it will be reflected towards or it will be shown on the poles only. But how they're getting expanded to the mid latitudes? That is the main cause of concern because Ladakh we've seen it. So auroras expand to mid latitudes when the solar wind is extremely strong. When the magnetic field coming from the sun is extremely strong. This happens when the activity of the sun's surface goes up, leading to solar flares and coronal mass ejections. In such cases, the solar wind is so intense that it can result in a geomagnetic storm, also known as magnetic storm, and reach the lower latitudes. This is what needs to be understood. In a nutshell, if the intensity of the magnetic field coming from the sun is too high, then it will reach the mid latitudes. It is during a magnetic storm that auroras can be seen in the mid latitude. One such geomagnetic storm was kicked off on Friday after a CME hit the Earth. CME means coronal mass ejections, which was high intensity coronal mass ejection hit the Earth. That's why auroras were visible in several parts of the world. In the northern hemisphere, also in the southern hemisphere, also in Australia and New Zealand, also it was visible. In India, also it was visible. In USA, also it was visible. So it was like this. What is the impact of geomagnetic storms? If there are high intensity geomagnetic storms, what kind of impact they can have on our atmosphere? This is also one thing which should be known. It can impact the GPS, global positioning system, which is basically a satellite communication system where 24 satellites are deployed and they are telling us or navigating uh, for us, like the Google Maps is dependent upon GPS. Then radio and satellite communications can be impacted, flight operations can be impacted, power grids can be impacted, the electricity flow through them can be definitely impacted. Space exploration programs, they can be impacted. So in the case of high intensity solar coronal mass injections, all these things can be impacted, and from here UPSC definitely can ask questions. So this was all about aurora borealis and aurora australis. However, it has never been experienced on the equator till now, and experts say that practically it is impossible as well. Well, it was earlier impossible on the lower latitudes also. Now it is visible. So this is like it, that as of now it is impossible on the equator. Let's see the future of it. Next is ULB elections in Nagaland, that is urban local body elections in Nagaland. After the conclusion of Lok Sabha polls, there is going to be elections, that is the urban local body elections in Nagaland. And there are 3 municipal councils over there and 36 town councils. The State Election Commission, which is responsible for conducting elections for the local level, has basically announced the schedule, and these elections will start on June of 26 and it will be concluded on the same day. Now, the last urban local body elections, why we are reading this? Is it so significant? Because ULB elections happen. Everywhere it happens. Everywhere it happens, but not in Nagaland. For the first time and the only time, the elections which have happened for the urban local bodies in Nagaland was 2004. That is why it is significant. You need to understand and know that why, elections for the urban local bodies in Nagaland have not happened. So here we go with this. You need to know the root cause of that. Now, the root cause behind this is urban local body polls is not they are not conducted because this provision of the 73rd and 74th Amendment Act, that not less than 1/3 of the total number of seats for women should be reserved. Now, Nagas, traditional people, tribes, they believe that according to their tradition, women in their communities are not participants in administrative setups. And here you're talking about making them, I would say, participate in the urban local body polls according to the reservation clause. And this is against our customary practices. On the other hand, the Constitution under Article 371A gives us or empowers us to uphold our customary practices. This is one of our customary practices, that women will not participate in any administrative positions. They will not sit. So we are upholding 371A above the 74th and 73rd Amendment Act, which gives 33% reservation to women in panchayats and urban local bodies. 73rd Amendment Act in panchayats, 74th Amendment Act in urban local bodies. This is the basic root cause behind this issue. Now, why women reservation was contentious for Nagas? Because, it is in contravention with Naga customary laws that women don't participate. And Article 371A of the Constitution they uphold, which accords special status to Nagaland and allows them to uphold their customary practices and laws. So they are upholding it and they're saying that we won't allow women to participate. Now, when this happened, so there were definitely some supporters of women participation in Nagaland only. Those guys approached the Guwahati High Court that Nagas are blocking this. This is not run. They are not allowing or letting the 74th Amendment Act of the Constitution to be applicable in Nagaland. Women reservation is not being allowed. Nagas were saying you do local bodies, you establish, but women will not participate. So when they approached the Guwahati High Court, the pro, I would say, or the supporters of women reservation, the Guwahati High Court directed the Nagaland government to hold local body elections with women reservation. It was basically a victory for the supporters. In 2012, the State Assembly passed a resolution rejecting women's reservation in the polls because this was highly contested by the Nagas, the Naga tribes. There were incidences of violence also. And in 2012, the State Assembly had to pass resolution rejecting women's reservation in the polls. Following this, the NMA is that Naga Mothers Association, who is a supporter of women's reservation. NMA approached the Supreme Court. A special leave petition was filed in the Supreme Court, and in 2017, the Apex Court directed the government to hold the polls. The polls should be there with 33% seats reserved for women. When the government moved to conduct the elections in line with this directive, the state was rocked with violent protest once again, in which 2 people died. So, one violent protest after the Guwahati High Court judgment, one violent protest after the Supreme Court judgment, both the courts saying that 33% reservation should be given. But these judgments of the courts were not implemented. That is why we are saying that since 2004, no, I would say, elections have happened. Now, the negotiations. See, any conflict or any contradictory, I would say, things or thoughts can be resolved by negotiating. The negotiation started, and in 2022, some developments did happen. A multi-stakeholder meeting in March with the tribal bodies, churches, civil society organizations, and NGOs, in which a resolution to hold the polls was adopted. The government then informed the Supreme Court that it was ready to implement 33% reservation for women in the polls. This was in line with the demand of NMA, Naga Mothers Association, in line with the Constitution's 74th Amendment Act, in line with the judgment of the Guwahati High Court and the Supreme Court. And the top court asked Nagaland State Election Commission to schedule dates. But there were certain hiccups. When the dates and all were announced and elections were ready to be conducted, there was again violence. Those elections were disrupted. And the tribal ho-hos, the apex tribal bodies, they resolved to boycott the polls till the Nagaland Municipal Act was reviewed. It was like the tribals did not want it. There was opposition to reservations. It began to emerge even after the negotiations were concluded. There were certain demands of the tribal ho-hos. We need to look into the demands also. The first was a demand for a guarantee from the government that 33% women's reservation does not infringe on Article 371A before rushing to conduct the urban local body election. Demand for specifying the duration for which the reservation would be applied. These people demanded that reservation should be applied for only 2 terms. After that, no reservation. Without reservation, the polls will happen. An opposition to reserving the position of chairperson for women. You can give reservation at other levels, but at the chairperson level, where you will be the head of a municipal corporation or a council, there you should not give reservation for women, because according to the 74th Amendment Act, 33% reservation is given at every level. So these were their demands. Let's see how many of these demands have been fulfilled. Now, actually, what happens is when the 74th Amendment Act was passed and the 73rd Amendment Act was passed, it was now the prerogative of every state to make a law for their respective state, that what kind of subjects they are delegating to the local bodies in their state. So every state in India had to make that law, had to pass that law, and every state did pass that law. Nagaland also did pass that law in 2004. That is why the elections were there. That particular law, the old law, according to which the one and only elections happened in Nagaland, was repealed. A new Nagaland Municipal Bill 2023 was introduced, and according to this bill, 33% reservation for women was there. And it has done away with the provision of reservation to the post of chairman. One of the demand has been met. This bill is silent upon that whether it will give 33% reservation to women for 2 terms, 3 terms, 4 terms, or something like this. It is silent on that. So one of these demands have been met, and it also entails provisions for taxes on immovable property and all. And these are kind of the powers which have been developed to the local bodies elsewhere as well. Now, polls which are now scheduled are in line with this new act. According to this new act, in which 33% reservation will be given to the women, but not at the chairman level, which is the highest position in the municipal council. That level seats are not reserved. Lower than that, seats are reserved. 33% seats are reserved for women. But this particular demand has not been, accommodated. That, specifying the duration for which the reservation would be applied. The bill is silent on this. So let us see what happens. First of all, polls should happen, and peacefully they should happen, because urban local governance is suffering in Nagaland. Now we come to the MCQs. First is, consider the following statements and mark the correct one. Aurora borealis is experienced in northern hemisphere. It is not visible on the equator. Which among these is true? Very simple question it is. When solar wind particles collide with oxygen, a green color light is produced. First statement. Auroras expand to mid latitudes when the solar wind is weak. So among these, which is correct? Third is, the 73rd Amendment Act entails 33% at the max reservation for females at all the levels in panchayats. The 74th Amendment Act was not applicable to Nagaland. Read it very carefully and answer. Next is Article 371A of the Constitution pertains to which of the following? Panchayat provisions for the state of Nagaland, urban local body provisions for the state of Nagaland, establishing tribal councils for the state of Nagaland, or none of the above. So the 4 questions you need to answer. Sorry, I went on the answer page. I hope you have not seen that. And you need to answer these and mention in the comment section. And I will be responding to the answers over there. And with this, we come to an end of today's session. I will be seeing you tomorrow now with more such informative news pieces. Till then, you guys very well know what to do. Keep studying, keep reading, keep writing, keep watching the videos, and most importantly, keep revising. Namaste, Jai.